Hey everybody, so today's video I'm shooting it from Maine. Right now I am in Perkins Cove, Maine. It's by Algonquin, Maine. You can see the boats behind me. Big time lobster place. If you love lobster and seafood, this is the place to be. So I lived here about 10 minutes north right from here, and basically my kids were born here and I loved it, but I left here and I moved to New Hampshire. So I'm going to talk today about why I left Maine and moved to New Hampshire, and then eventually I left New Hampshire and moved to Florida. So I want to explain some pros and cons about Maine, but I just want to show you guys around. I'll probably do the Maine video from York, Maine, where I'm staying. So we're gonna walk a little bit on Marginal Way, so I will do some filming there too, but check out the town, Perkins Cove. I'm on a little bit of drawbridge that you can actually press the button, raise it and lower it. The button's right here. I guess they actually trust people to open and close the bridge themselves. All right, we'll do one more view and then let's just start walking around. Here's a little bit more video of Perkins Cove. Bunch of little shops, and basically best lobster rolls around are over here. And if you like little knickknacks, especially if you go 10 minutes north in Wells, they have like antique shops, one after the other. Some of the best antique shops are around here. So I really highly recommend coming and visiting Maine. York, Maine, Wells, Maine, and Algonquin, great places. So we'll continue recording. We're gonna go for a walk on Marginal Way. So let's check that out. All right, we're gonna walk on Marginal Way a little bit. So basically, Florida, we got manatees. Over here, they have seals. Just wanted to show you a little bit of Marginal Way. Got a lobster boat coming in. But anyways, I'm gonna bounce around a little bit so you guys can see a little bit of everything. And let's continue walking. So we're going to leave Marginal Way and we're going to go to York Beach. So I'm going to explain to you why I left Maine and ended up in New Hampshire. And then I'm going to do a video from New Hampshire explaining why I left New Hampshire, ended up in Florida. And that's where I'm going to probably end up staying. So stay tuned, and just one more view so you can see Perkins Cove. Great place to visit, and this is Marginal Way. There's just one more place I want to show you. So you can rent like a 2-bedroom condo over here weekly and just enjoy yourself and just hang out. This is still by Perkins Cove, and you can just wake up to this every morning, and the water's beautiful. So check it out. See all the cliffs, the houses. You have your own little private beach. All right, let's go to York Beach. All right, we made it to York Beach. So basically, York is one of the oldest towns in Maine. It was settled around, I wrote it down, 1624. So it's pretty old. And it's a great place to see. You see like a lot of stores, knickknacks. If you like chocolate, perfect place to go. Sweatshirts, you name it. It's about 55 degrees right now. So basically York is about 131 square miles, and it has to do with York Harbor, York Beach, and Cape Nettic. It encloses that area. Beautiful area. I come here every year to come visit because I used to live, like I said before, about 10 miles up the road in a place called Wells, Maine. So a few other things about York that I looked up. So basically, believe it or not, the average house is about $675,000. So that's pretty high for the average house. The houses along the water, along the cliffs, you're talking about in the millions. So I don't know, it's pretty expensive. But let's talk about why I left Maine. One of the first reasons I left Maine to go to New Hampshire was, just like in Florida, why a lot of people leave Florida, is family. My wife's family was in New Hampshire, and even though they were just literally 45 minutes to an hour away, decided we want to move closer to them. So let's talk about some of the reasons why I loved Maine, and then we'll talk about some of the reasons I didn't like Maine. One of the best things about Maine is natural beauty. Cliffs, beautiful clean ocean on the Atlantic. If you live near the seashore, it was awesome. If you want natural beauty and hiking trails and things to do, places to walk, you can't beat Maine. It's one of the nicest areas around. The other thing I liked about Maine was anywhere you go in Maine, very low crime, felt very safe. Even when I was going to Portland, Maine, Bangor, Maine, it always felt safe. I hardly ever see any crime or anything going on. Hey, listen, I know there's crime everywhere, but the crime in Maine was pretty low, at least the time I lived here, and I believe till this day it's one of the still the lowest crime states around. The other thing we like too about Maine is the education system. Back then we did have kids, so we considered the education system of Maine to see if it was something, you know, good for the kids. And they had great schools, great colleges, great high schools. At the end of the day, they didn't end up going to school in Maine because they were young and we moved, but that was one of the things we considered when we were moving to Maine and living in Maine. All right, here's another one. Close-knit communities. Like, all the towns are very close-knit. A lot of activities. Everybody knows everybody. If somebody's in trouble, you know, they will come back out and help you out. So communities is definitely a big thing in Maine. So if you like close-knit communities, Maine might be the place for you. Here's one of my favorites of Maine: the food. If you like seafood, I'm a big lobster, crab kind of person. Seafood, I love the seafood in Maine. You can't get fresher seafood than any other place. So seafood, everything, pretty much all the restaurants here, the food is excellent. So I have a harder time finding restaurants with bad food than good food, because every one I go to, the food is really good, in my opinion. So if you're into food, especially seafood, Maine's the place for you. But like any place, the cons. Why I left Maine. Basically, like I said before, one of the reasons I left Maine was my wife's family was in New Hampshire. So we moved to New Hampshire to be closer to her family. But the other big reason is the weather. It's May now, and it's about 55 degrees outside. I just took off my jacket because I got hot from walking. But it's cold here. I'm talking about, for me, what I consider maybe 3 months, if I'm lucky, 4 months of doing stuff outside. Otherwise, it gets too cold. The weather is brutal here, especially in the dead of winter. It gets dark early, snow, the wind off the Atlantic. It's too much. you have to be pretty hardy to live in Maine during the winters. If you could afford it, get a summer place here, maybe $700,000, but get a summer place here and then go someplace else for the winter, like Florida. Best of both worlds. The next reason I left is very limited job opportunities in Maine. It's not like Florida, even New Hampshire, because New Hampshire is closer to Boston, you know, Manchester, all that area. So even as a home inspector, if I wanted to do it here, first of all, the houses are a lot older, so it'd be a lot more difficult to inspect, and they're a lot bigger than stuff in Florida, but they're far between. So yeah, along the seashore they're all close together, but if you get to rural Maine, they're not close together. So the population of Maine is not that big, so job opportunities are limited. So I took that into consideration, and that was another reason why I left Maine. So on top of that, one of the reasons I left was because everything is so far apart. There's not a lot of amenities, let's just say, at least for me, you know. So there's not a lot of things to do. If I want to go to Portland, Maine, I'm driving like an hour. And then when I do want to do things in the summer, when things start opening up for the 3 months, all the tourists come here from Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, just like in Florida. But it gets so crowded here that where my house was to the supermarket was like a mile away on Route 1, and it would take me 30 minutes to drive a mile because it was just a standstill traffic, because it's just single lane roads. So it got so difficult with the tourists, I couldn't take it anymore. It was faster for me to jump on a bicycle or walk to the supermarket than drive 1 mile to the supermarket and get what I needed. So it got pretty crowded during the months that I could go outside. Here's another one when it comes to Maine, why I left. You think New York and California are expensive? Maine's expensive. I had to pay income tax. The property taxes were still high. Food is high. Even seafood is expensive here. Figure that. Everything is so expensive in Maine. I just couldn't take it anymore. So the cost of living, because I visit Maine so much now, it's definitely cheaper to live in Florida or even New Hampshire than it is to live in Maine. Maine has an income tax, New Hampshire doesn't, Florida doesn't. So you really got to consider that stuff. Sales tax, New Hampshire has no sales tax. Maine has a high sales tax. So the state is so huge and the population is so low, because I believe because of the harsh winters, that their taxes have to be high just to support the infrastructure. In closing, Maine is a beautiful place to visit. I recommend everybody come visit Maine. Go enjoy the 3-4 months there, eat some seafood, look at the sea coast. It's beautiful. The winter, harsh. So mostly you're gonna be here with everybody else. So Maine wasn't for me. It might be for you, but there's too many cons and not enough benefits of living in Maine. But anyways, that's the video for today. Please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification so next time I upload a video, you'll get notified. I will speak to you in the next one. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.